export to the cloud. There we go.
Yes, ma'am. I think we went over midterm grades last week.
We did.
Yes,
Correct?
ma'am.
All right, good. All right. Okay. All right, so now I may be looking back and forth because I've got these two screens that I'm working with. So I'll try to move this over so I can reference this, but I'm going to try to get, there we go. Let's see if that works a little better. All right. Okay, so now you can see that I'm pulling up this quiz because I want to give you that hard copy, which I've been telling you I was going to do, right? So you will have that to review, and I will post a midterm for you to look at and complete as we planned. We'll call it a midterm. We're just going to call it exam 1. Okay. So you'll do that test after you have the quiz you can study from. Okay. And all right. So we are supposed to be talking about fields of practice. That's right. This is something that I just found, which is very exciting to me and is interesting because when we talk about fields of practice, there are two phrases, or okay, let me take a breath because I've been trying to kind of hurry all day. There are two terms that we use to describe both the places where we work, where social services are delivered, and the type of people with whom we work, or our client base. The places where we work and do social work are called settings. And our settings are characterized by certain aspects of the business or entity in which you work. So it could be a public agency like Department of Children and Family Services or vocational rehab. Those are examples of public. Social Security Office, Department of Corrections. You could work in the police department, you could work in prisons. Usually those are public, meaning that they're government, state, federal, or local. Prisons are kind of both government or public, or they are private. And they can be voluntary nonprofit organizations, or they can be corporate for-profit organizations. So corporate organizations are typically going to be those that are in business making money. So prisons can be both public, run by states, or detention facilities like juvenile detention facilities or local jails where you're temporarily held until you go to a longer term lockdown facility for adults. They can be public or they can be private. Prisons can be private, so can juvenile detention facilities. So it just depends on if it's a company running your business or where you're working, or if it's the government that's running your business. That's the setting. And then your clients, the people that you serve in those settings are your clients, and they define your field of social work practice. So for example, if you are working in juvenile detention facility, say you took the civil service job and they offer you a job in Green Oaks Detention Facility here in town, and you go to work for that. Well, that's going to be, you don't have to worry about this because I want to ask you this. This is something that we do in the social work curriculum in the policy course. But Green Oaks is kind of a, sort of a quasi-public facility, because there are aspects where consultants are brought in and aspects of it that I believe are also nonprofit, but is contracted by the state. So it kind of shares both aspects. But you don't have to worry about that. You just need to know that there's either public or private. Okay. And then there are fields, those are settings, public or private. And then the fields are the people with whom you work, whatever their needs are. If you're working with a kid that's been bad and finds himself in Green Oaks detention facility, and you've been offered a job, the civil service test in Louisiana, and it says, this is the first job open, do you want it? You say, yeah, and you get into it because you always wanted to work with juvenile delinquents, kids with problems, older kids with problems. Great, that defines your field of practice. You see that? So your field of practice then may be criminal justice, social work. Okay, because juvenile detention facilities and prisons are part of the juvenile justice system in the United States. Of course, there's much more to that. What else is there to the juvenile, not the juvenile? What else comprises the criminal justice system in the United States?
Like what other occupations?
Go ahead, Matt. What'd you say?
Like what other occupations compose it is what you're asking?
Yeah, but yeah, you can tell me occupations. Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, like lawyer or judges. I'm not sure.
Yes, right. The court system, which would involve judges or lawyers, as well as, you know, officers of the court, right? Mm-hmm.
Law enforcement.
Law enforcement, exactly right. So some police departments work conjointly, meaning that they are police officers. They don't have social workers on staff, but they work together with social workers, for example, to go out to remove a child. Not all states do that, and not all states do it routinely, those that do. Some are like Louisiana, that if you need special assistance, did I tell y'all the story about the student who went to work, when she graduated from ULM, she went to work with the state, and she moved to New Orleans. She graduated from ULM, but she moved to New Orleans because she had family down in South Louisiana, and she took a job down there. Did I tell you the story about her and almost getting, had a shotgun pointed at her?
No.
I didn't tell y'all that? Well, I was supervising this young lady, and she was, you know, working in New Orleans, and she had to go to this house to investigate a report of abuse. And it happened to be a house where there were two women who were co-parenting and were partners, intimate partners. So they, this was before marriage and all that, so who knows if they are, I don't know. But anyway, so this student was in the home. She knocks on the door, you know, supposed to just to sort of looks like it's going to be a simple referral, right? And that all she's going to have to, it doesn't sound like it's real serious. There's a report of like neglect and suspicion of abuse. So she goes to investigate. She knocks on the door. A woman opens the door and identifies herself as the parent. And yes, you know, we were expecting you and so on, because they knew the neighbor had reported them, right? So they, she goes in and she sits down, she's talking to this woman, and the other woman, the other mama, comes downstairs with a shotgun. And she's sitting on the couch, and she looks up, and the woman proceeds to use expletive deletive, what do you call that? Expletives, certain cuss words. So she's using certain cuss words, very specific, nasty cuss words, and saying basically, get the hell out of my house, pointing the gun at the student. And so she gets up, and I'm trying not to call her name because I don't want to. Anyway, so she gets up, and she said she gradually sort of tried to walk to the door. You know, she's trying to walk to the door backwards, she said. And as she was walking to the door, the woman standing there at the bottom of the stairs holding the gun. She's like not totally at the bottom. She described it as that she was like maybe had come down the stairs gradually pointing the gun and, you know, cussing her. And so she comes up to the door and she says, no problem. I'll check with my supervisor. And she walks out, right? Shuts the door and gets in her car and starts, you know, shaking like crazy because, you know, who knows? She might have been actually shot. Who knows? So she goes back and she calls the police, and the police then, you know, accompanied her do the investigation. And they did actually end up removing the child because he did have bruising on him. I think he was like maybe a 4 or 5 year old child. The reason I know that story is because when she went down there, I was at that time, it was before I had moved to Alabama for a while. I was a board approved clinical supervisor, and those credentials are BACS. In social work, we refer to those in Louisiana as a BACS, BACS, LCSW BACS, which means that we can supervise other students, licensed masters in social work for the licensed clinical social work credential. So yeah, she had some pretty serious trauma from that because it scared her so badly, you know. About that same time, we began to see that there were social workers who were actually being shot on the job. And that was another reason that she was fearful, because she had that shotgun pointed at her. And, you know, she took it serious because that's where we are. It wasn't until that time, not because of my case, but because of another case that had happened to the nation around about the same time, that we had heard about in conference the year before, and now are finally dealing with directly, that we included those kinds of safety precautions for DCFS workers, but also mental health workers. When I was doing part-time mental health while teaching at Jacksonville State in Jacksonville, Alabama, we went through safety training and defense measures for disarming someone physically if we were, you know, having someone who was out of control because they were delusional or just in a psychiatric crisis, right? So we now are doing that consistently, but really only in the last maybe 15 years or so that we've included that as part of standard training for social workers. So violence in the country has had serious ramifications for even professions like social work that were never thought to be particularly risky, but that is not the case anymore. So is it part of society and the way that we now regard our Second Amendment rights? I don't know. What do y'all think?
I think people just are like too trigger happy, and they don't respect the guns, and so they just go waving them around at people because they think it's their Second Amendment right, which wasn't really designed for just, I don't know. I don't think that situation.
Yeah. Well, there typically is two sides, but it's really not that clear cut. The two sides, things never really are when it comes to human nature and human attitudes, completely binary, either or, okay? Even murder can have shades of gray in determining, is it really someone is evil if they are engaging in self-defense, but you know, they end up being charged with what, not manslaughter.
Are you talking about like having mens rea, where it's like I don't know if I'm saying it right, it's like Latin or something that means like evil mind, like if you had premeditated it or something, that's what they want to determine, I think. Right,
yeah. And if someone is, this is often an issue with domestic violence, because women, there was a spell before we had the battered spouse syndrome, because of research done on domestic violence, that women were just summarily put into prison if they were defending themselves against a violent husband and they sought to kill them. There was, and there are several actually movies that are made and are constantly resurfacing. What is that channel? Lifetime channel, I think. They often will have romantic stuff, but they'll also show programs that have to do with domestic violence. And you know, it used to be that if a woman was experiencing serious life-threatening domestic violence and finally, reacted against it because they'd had enough, they just were emotionally so abused because of the physical abuse and other forms of bad treatment, I guess, that they kill their spouse or partner, right? But now we do consider that, but there is also, Robert, what you bring up is really one of those gray areas that's difficult to determine sometimes with the battered spouse syndrome. Mhm. So, I'm thinking about, what was that Arias, that girl that killed her boyfriend?
Jody area.
Yeah, Jody Arias, and then there was, what was that famous one? I'm not sure if y'all were probably in grade school during then. It was a famous case of a girl that actually killed her kid, and her name was Casey Anthony, I think it is.
Oh,
Anyway.
that wasn't too long ago. That was like 7 years ago, I think, 2013 or something.
Yeah. But yeah, to me, that's really recent history. But, Rob, for you, I think it's probably not so recent. I mean, it's, 7 years is fairly recent, but y'all are a lot younger than me. So it seems like yesterday for me, right? Anyhow, so yeah, so she, had a interesting outcome to her circumstance too. But anyway, so what I'm asking you basically is your opinion about second right amendments. That's right. So Robert is right in what he's responding to. And that was what I was asking you about. So we got there as a little tangent before reviewing the quiz. And we got there by starting out with this site that I found that I'm going to build the assignment around. So Maya, this was going to be your assignment, but it didn't get quite finished for you to complete, but it will be, because that's what we want to focus on now, is really look at the different types of social work that different levels of social workers do, and the types of populations and the specializations within different fields of practice based on the people with whom you work. So that's how we ended up asking about Second Amendment, because I was telling you about the girl who I supervised, the young woman I supervised for her LCSW and her case of the shotgun being pointed at her, and now doing safety training for workers, social workers, because of the increased risk. And we could say that part of that increased risk, not just for social work, but any job, you name it. I mean, my goodness, what just happened where we had 10 people killed? Oh, wait, that was a grocery store, wasn't it? But, these mass shootings in places of business or work environments really started in the late 80s and were associated first with post offices. So the expression of going postal, for example, was about disgruntled workers with the postal system, where we had kind of a rash of those, where the postal worker went in and just shot up a bunch of people, in the mail sorting area. I think the very first one was like that. So that's where that phrase comes from. But since then, it's just escalated to where now we are kind of awash in these two supposed binary choices of, you're either all for any kind of weaponry, including every kind of gun there is, whenever it's created and for whatever purpose, as a civil right, versus restrictions on certain types of weaponry. Now, any kind of weaponry is interpreted as part of First Amendment rights to be armed. There was, however, a period of time when assault weapons, and I'm not talking about just the, what does my husband tell me? I'm not an expert on guns. I don't own guns. I don't know how to shoot guns. I never have. So, but he hunts, and there's a gun that, a a kind of rifle that you use for hunting that you can do like rapid fire. And he says that's what they call assault weapons. Have y'all heard anything like that?
Might be like a semi-auto or an assault. I mean, they call a lot of stuff the wrong name just as like a fear tactic, I think. But I think he's talking about semi-autos where you can you can shoot multiple rounds, but not like in a chain, you know, about every couple seconds or something.
Yeah. And I think of an assault rifle as like a machine gun. I don't know, you know, whatever those things are. What are those Russian guns? The AK something something. I don't know. Obviously, that's not my specialty. Huh? What?
I mean, either I don't know a whole lot about him, just a little bit.
Well, the controversy, though, here's the deal, is that controversy during the 90s, there was a spell of time that the legislature, the federal legislature did enact restrictions on assault weapons. And during that period of time, and see, remember, we had the postal term that actually started in the late 80s, right? So by the 90s, we reacted to that and put a restriction on certain assault weapons that are military grade, right? That you would use in military settings, for example. So those restrictions that existed for about 9 years, actually during that period of time compared to now, reduced the incidence of mass shootings. But since then, there's been this big push for just everything goes. Interestingly, the National Rifle Association, the NRA, is primarily responsible. Someone had a comment? According to many who study this issue, many think tanks and so on, many pundits on both sides of the political aisle, whether conservative or liberal, there are many varying ideas about to what degree weaponry should be available, or even military equipment of any sort, protective equipment to weapons, right? That all of that should be available for an armed militia, meaning the common citizen has the right to be armed, according to a literal interpretation of the Second Amendment. But the National Rifle Association, who supports that, did not start out to be that. And I encourage y'all to look up the history of the National Rifle Association. It started out first and foremost simply as an organization to train young people on safety and a safe use of firearms. And that was it. It wasn't about where we are today. So it's very interesting. And I would say that the fact that social work, that you wouldn't think would be a profession particularly at risk for violence, which we hadn't been until, you know, this really the onset of the 21st century, that we've really seen an increase of risk to social workers, just like risks to any profession anywhere, or any worker anywhere for that matter. But anyway, so away from that, park that. We're not going to talk about that anymore, but we're going to go back to looking at the quiz. So we have plenty of time to do that, because I had a question about that. Also, if you have a university excused absence and you did not receive points for attendance, I will go back and fill that in for you, but you have to provide me a copy of that, because for some reason I have not gotten notices like we typically do of university excused absences, whether it's athletics or something to do with academics or sorority or fraternity or whatever. So make sure you let me know that if that was the case for some of y'all's, okay? All right, so this is something you'll see again. It's really a good site that I just discovered when I was looking for something for an assignment and got distracted with advising. Okay, so now we're going to go to review the quiz. Okay. Whoops. Do y'all see the quiz right now? You see a document?
Yes, ma'am.
Will this be posted on Moodle or no?
Yes, it will. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
It's just not there right this second, okay? All right. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. These are questions that are just a variation, and they are questions provided for you from another quiz that I want you to have, so you can use it for studying for the first exam that I'll put up for you, that you'll have a week to do. So it won't be due until after spring break is over. It won't be due until, oh gosh, I lost my calendar. Lord, where is it?
Is this a study guide for the quiz?
Yes, it is. Mhm. Okay. All right. So the first one, that social work is a profession that's still unfounded scientifically, recognized as an art because it focuses on the unpredictability of human nature. It is considered an art, just as medicine is considered an art to some degree, nursing, teaching, even engineering. And I've heard of engineers that, my husband works with some regarding buildings, and because he is a draftsman and has been for some decades now. So he's worked with several different engineers and building structures and so on. And some of them can just spot when something's going to be a problem before they even study the full plan, you would say. And so that's even an art to some degree. That generally comes with experience and sensitivity about the field that you have studied, right? So it is with social work. It is an art. Human nature is unpredictable. But here's the thing about tests generally, that this part is untrue. It is no longer a field that we do by the seat of our pants. We do it because we have a specific way of going about what we do. And you're going to learn some about that before this is all said and done as we go into fields of practice, okay? But this second part is true. So what do you know about answering a true-false question? It's sort of a coin toss, right? It's either one or the other, 50-50 really. But it doesn't have to be 50-50 if you know this little trick. And that is, anytime you see an apostrophe, read what's before and what's after. Because if you just read it all in one thing, you may say, yeah, that she said it was an art. Yeah, that's got to be true. Now stop and think and read the first part and then the second part. Are both parts true? Because if one part is not true, the whole statement is false. So this is false. If I had just put social work is recognized as an art, because then that would be true, right? Because that part is true. Two fields of social work practice for social work professionals, we know that that is not true, although you may not be fully aware of that. But if you look at the assignment that you're going to have, all of those different areas of fields of practice are a testament to the different types of populations that we work with that define our field of social work practice. And we engage in multiple fields, by the way. So for example, my own practice, I started out as medical social work because I was working in a hospital. And then I further subspecialized in women, infants, and children and infants in intensive and pediatric care, right? Neonatal and pediatric care. So that was my first field of practice. Then I went into child welfare specifically. Not public child welfare, but child welfare through consultation and grant work that I did for 15 years on a full-time basis. So I worked with the state in a contractual basis. And then with that, I also did some community organizing. So I was in that field for a while in that particular practice area. So there are many fields of practice. So I went from medical to child welfare, and then to teaching, and then to mental health, or mental health and teaching actually at the same time. When social workers engage in macro practice, they're primarily doing direct work with a client or client system, right? So is there anything about this that's true or untrue? No, it's just a statement. So you don't have to worry about whether that's an issue, but this part is an issue because macro and direct don't go together. Remember, macro practice is indirect, meaning that what you do on macro level, the biggest level on which we work in social work, is called administration. It's also called policymaking or community organizing, because we don't work directly with clients necessarily. We work with the workers who work with clients, or we create policy who works with clients. That's what macro practice is. This one is true. Social workers in a voluntary nonprofit agency typically do not earn as much as social workers who work in a government agency. This is kind of a prelude to talking about fields of practice. And that's what I was actually giving you when I was telling you that there are characteristics of settings, social work settings, that describes your where you do your work, or the type of agency in which you work as a social worker. So it is true that among those settings, nonprofit typically do not pay as well as government or public work does. Just FYI for those of y'all who are social work majors. So that's true. But every once in a while, you get a good, large nonprofit that'll pay you really well. I think United Way does pretty good, but I don't know about part-time or those workers who are new workers, for example. I'm not sure what those going wages are. Okay, characteristics of the social work profession, a cornerstone value. What does that mean? A cornerstone value?
Like it's central, it's what the profession is built on.
Yes, exactly right. Thank you. So it's exactly right that is an important part of the value system in social work. So certainly, not only is it a cornerstone, it's the number one, it's the main cornerstone. In building, they've got a name for that besides cornerstone. I can't think of it right now. Anyway, learned by osmosis, which obviously didn't work very well for me in remembering his work, but anyway. So yeah, it means that it's central to the profession, an inestimable value of human beings. Remember, I always tell you, and I know I told this class at the beginning, though I love that word. When you're talking about dignity and worth of humanity, I like to think of that as the inestimable worth or value of human beings, because I just like that word. It's just such a cool, just good feeling word. It's powerful. Among the core values of the social work profession, spend a lot of time on that. Social workers are expected to embrace and exhibit in day-to-day work with clients, whether groups or communities. They are expected to evidence those values. So among the core values of social profession that all social workers are expected to embrace and exhibit in their day-to-day work with clients, groups, and communities is the mission of the profession, which is service to others, right? So that's true. Not necessary to be licensed as a BSW on a pre-professional or entry level. Why is that? Oh wait, that's supposed to be false, sorry.
That's what I thought.
You're right. You're right.
Because to be on the pre-professional entry, I mean, like, I'm pretty sure you would probably have to get like a master's or a doctorate. I'm just guessing. I'm pretty sure it has to be a high level education.
Right. Yes, you have to have the master's, right?
Okay.
Well, you can get the BSW is considered, and I hate this term. I can't wait till the profession grows and gets away from it, which will probably be after I retire. But nonetheless, I hate the term pre-professional. Entry level would be good. You have entry level for nurses, but nurses could still get the license, right? That is what gives them their pay. And they can do that with a 2-year degree. So why do we call a 4-year degree pre-professional? I don't think that that's good terminology for us as a profession, and I hope we grow beyond that. But you're exactly right. That's Maya, was that you? Because I can't.
Yes, ma'am.
So thank you. You're exactly right. That was supposed to be false. Sorry about
Mhm.
that. That's false. But the wait a minute. I'm telling you wrong. If we put it's false if we did this. LCSW on the pre-professional level would be false.
Oh,
Okay. Now, what would we say to this one if we did this? True or false?
hmm.
I just
Oh.
told you BSW is pre-professional.
Mm-hmm.
False.
False. Because I mean, like, yeah, because I mean, to work in anything, like, when you probably, it would be nice to have a license.
It'd be nice to, but here's the thing. The problem is that that's actually true.
Oh,
So I need to fix that. I need to correct that for you because I read it this wrong way too the first time I read it out there to y'all. Okay, so here's the thing. The BSW is now, there is a credential for the BSW in every state now, okay? Whereas when I started my undergraduate degree, there was only 14 states licensing social workers, but only on the master's level, LCSW, licensed clinical social work level, right? So that has changed over the time of my career. So that's exciting for people like me who have loved what we do, have seen that growth, have been part of the evolution of our profession, if you will, to that professional status that we have always been doing, really. And especially with the evidence-based practice methods where we are now in every helping profession, social work, counseling, psychiatry, psychology, etc. So I keep getting this little message, my internet connection is unstable.
that's what mine is saying. I wonder what that means.
I don't know, but as long as you can hear me, I don't care. Okay, so, but in Louisiana, and true among other states, the BSW generally is not required to be licensed. And that's something we'll get more into as we go through the fields of practice. There are certain areas where BSWs, like certain states, because, you know, I was involved in the licensing issue and with the board in Alabama, I know that the BSW, the worker who comes out with the undergraduate in social work from accredited university, if they're going to work for the state, especially in child welfare, public child welfare, then they must have the license. They must have the licensed bachelor social work credential. And if they don't have that license, which requires them to take a test, then they don't get to keep their job after 6 months. In Louisiana, they want you to get the RSW, but to my knowledge, it's not necessarily a requirement at this point. For nonprofit settings, it's not a requirement. So truly, the RSW is still largely voluntary. So that's something to just kind of keep in mind. We'll talk more about that with fields, okay? Only advanced practitioners can engage in clinical mental health treatment or other fields of the social work profession requiring advanced knowledge, but they have to be licensed on the BSW level by the National Association of by the National Social Work Board of Examiners, NSWB. That whole thing is messed up. When you see a statement like this that goes on and on and on, you're best to just say false. Take your best guess. It's 50-50 anyway. But this one's so messed up. It says only advanced practitioners can engage in clinical mental health treatment or other fields of social work profession requiring advanced knowledge. That part is true because an advanced professional is going to be a licensed clinical social worker with a master's. But they have to be licensed on the BSW level. That's wrong. And then this is a totally wrong reference. There's not a National Social Work Board of Examiners. Only states have boards of examiners because each state has the state's right to create licensure requirements for specific occupations and professions. That's why doctors and nurses and social workers and psychologists, any profession has to have dual license in multiple states if they work in multiple states. Okay. So distinguishing characteristics of the social work profession. Here's a multiple choice. Which of the following would be considered most applicable to micro social work practice? And I've highlighted these for you. Working with individuals and families or using community resources to help somebody get what they need. Those are micro practice because you're working directly face to face, right? Right?
Correct.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay, so psychiatry and social work have a lot in common. We didn't talk a lot about commonalities of professions or professions that social work has borrowed from off and on as all of these disciplines have evolved historically. But psychiatry and social work have a lot in common. And the primary one is psychotherapy interventions with individuals, families, and some treatment groups. We do cognitive-based therapy, but it's the only evidence-based method. That's not true, so you can't do that. Mental health disorders and illnesses well enough to prescribe. We don't prescribe, no. Psychiatry does. Knowing about medications, we actually in mental health do master knowledge of certain psychiatric drugs, and on the master's level we do. So, so Robert, what you got? What are you asking?
Dr. Savage, I wanted to ask you if you know if the dual relationship guidelines are like as strict in social work because of how much more like involved you have to be with the people versus like psychiatry where they don't allow you to like even try to make like friends with them or interact with them outside of the practice.
We very much are. And go back and look at the code of ethics, okay? In that code about, I call them practice standards, that last one, it lists in there the issue of not only do we have strict standards about dual relationships, but we also have strict standards about dual relationships with our colleagues. And a certain period of time that right now, pretty much I can say with confidence because of the work I did with licensure in Alabama, it involved bringing in a consultant who was a consultant on pretty much every state on their licensing for social workers. So we kind of got into a bit of that to justify some of the changes we were working for in Alabama at that time I was there. But understanding and recognizing dual relationships is absolutely an emphasis for social work. And you're right, Robert, because we do get more involved. I mean, psychiatrists don't typically go out to the home, you know, and yet we do. So anytime you're doing that kind of work, and especially if you're doing something we're going to talk about with child welfare, which is family-based counseling or home-based home visitation programs. Nurses have that problem too with home visitation, particularly maternal child health nurses when they go out to do well baby checkups, like with some home health agencies and public health agencies. So yeah, it's a sticky situation, but it's certainly one where you can go and look at the Louisiana Board of Social Work Examiners, LABSWE, and look under the disciplinary action, and you will have to sift through them, but you'll find some where dual relationship was established and it was inappropriate.
Seems
it's-
like after
Go
you
ahead.
describe that, it seems like it's harder to avoid it versus psychiatry now that you've talked more about it.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. One of my favorite books I'll refer to deals with, is written by a guy that, and it's really good reading too. It's written by a guy that worked with child protection and did home visitation as part of his work, because he moved from child protection to another unit within public child welfare and was doing home visitation, and how he had to deal with clients who were, coming on to him sexually when he would go and do home visits. And here he is, a guy talking to a mom who's a single mom about her children and parenting, which in his era was something that we didn't really address as fully as we do now. So, I know what I was going to get to is that when you look at the licensing laws regarding dual relationships, that you can't have a dual relationship, according to our licensing law, for a period of no less than 2 full years after you terminate work with that person. No friendship, no marriage, no sex, no, none of that. Okay. I'm gonna let y'all read those, but I want to go down here to the ones that you actually took, okay? Because I didn't answer those, and I want y'all to engage with me about this. You were asked to match one of the 4 descriptions of each one of these practice methods. And why did I call that bad practice? Ooh. Let's delete that. I'll bet that really threw y'all. That would make more sense, wouldn't it? Match the category of social work ethical responsibilities, here they are, with the example, here are the examples of social work that demonstrates that category is defined by the NASW Code of Ethics. I apologize. It looks like I wrote that in a hurry. I hope that's what happened, because I caught that on some of these others too, that a couple other true faults, I think, that I'm going to fix for you too. But that's what you were supposed to do. And that's what we're going to do now. So promotion of the social work profession, which of these would most likely be an example of promotion of the social work profession? I'll let you read them.
I would say community organization and development.
Okay, so which would that go? Okay, so let's start with promotion of social profession. You think that, wait, you're associating community organization with this number 1, right? I'm pointing at the screen. You can't see me doing that. So helping a group of concerned citizens implement a community-wide child abuse prevention program would go with community organization and development. Is that what you're saying, Robert?
Oh, I'm sorry, I looked at the wrong thing. I think that one would probably be group work, actually. But
No, you were right the first time. Helping a group,
okay,
helping a group of concerned citizens implement a community-wide child abuse
okay,
prevention.
I confused myself there, so sorry.
Well, I'm sorry. I think I probably confused you fixing the original. This is called, this part right up here is called the stem of the item, and the stem was messed up. So I apologize for that matching. I must have truly been in a hurry. Yeah, so this goes with community organizations. So we would put one right here, correct? What about this one? Teaching in a CSW accredited social work program. Which one would it go with?
Wouldn't that be promotion of the social work profession? Because like it wouldn't be administration, because that would be indirect. And teaching, you would be directly talking to them. But that's
Yeah.
just a guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So promoting the social work profession would be an example of that would be teaching in a CSW accredited social work program. That's right. What about this one? Conducting a psychosocial assessment with as a mental health worker.
I think that would be administration.
Mm.
Which one did you ask again?
Conducting a psychosocial assessment as a mental health social worker.
Wouldn't that be community organization? Because like you're doing a support group helping people cope with the loss of a loved one. So that might be a little bit of a community organization.
Okay. All right. Let's take these apart. There is no match here for conducting a psychosocial assessment as a mental health social worker.
Oh.
Mhm. Because this item was just bad all the way around. So if we were going to fill that in and say, okay, what would that be? That would be
Casework?
yeah. Mhm. So if we added that, then we would actually have a correct match. You see that? The reason is because you're working with an individual to do a psychosocial assessment.
Okay.
Because we don't do psychosocial community assessments. We do community assessments, right? So even if we're evaluating a community for mental health services, we may evaluate the need for mental health services somehow in the community, but we would not, like say, maybe we take a survey of doctors who believe that their patients could benefit, maybe just general practitioner doctors or surgeons or whatever. And we get feedback saying, yes, we need mental health services in this area. I don't know, I'm just thinking off the top of my head. And so they create that would be indirect. That would be community organizing to create a mental health facility, but we're not doing anything psychosocial directly, right? That is a psychosocial assessment is something we only do in direct practice, casework. And that's really what was being tested here. But this whole, I'm not going to go into it, but hopefully we will clarify. This is what you need to know right here is what these aspects, because here group work, this is a method. See that? This is a method. And this is a method. And this one that we've just added is also, what is this? You see that? This isn't practice directly. This is ethics. but we could put 2 there for the reasons that y'all said, because when you're teaching, you're promoting the profession, basically. As I say, we're building social workers. So, but that's actually ethics. It doesn't really fit into a method of social work practice. You see that? And also what was wrong with this item here that probably gave y'all fits, I apologize for that. I really do. This one was not in the original options that you had. And plus, none of these were examples of bad practices. That's why I corrected this. Okay. And still, it's not quite what we're being asked to do here. Do you see that? This one, and this is these 4 right here: group work, community organization, administration, casework. These are the 4 methods of practice that I introduced to y'all, right?
Oh, yeah.
So this one is what we call direct. And why do we call it direct? Because you're doing it face to face, but with several people in typically a small group, not a large group, but a small group. Okay. This one right here, facilitating a support group for people trying to cope with the loss of a loved one. That is an emotional support group, and specifically one that's emotionally helping people deal with their grief, right? But a support group like that is going to be small. It's not going to be a big group of community people when you're dealing with something personal like that. So this one would actually go here, right? And then this one would repeat. Teaching in a CSW accredited social work program would be a form of administration because it's indirect, right? So helping a group of citizens, that is indirect because it's not the parent or the child that you're working with directly. It's the community to try to save children. Maybe building prevention programs, who knows? Okay, well, that's what it said. Here is indirect. Psychosocial, which is that one? I just told you a minute ago. Direct or indirect?
Direct.
Correct.
Because it's face to face, right? And then this one, direct or indirect? Oh, wait. I'll save this and put it up so you can go back and hopefully review it with these notes, okay? Because you're working with small group face to face. And whether we give you a specific example or we just call it group work, that's what we're talking about, okay? Make sure you are able to differentiate between ethics, because I assure you, I will correct this in more ways than one. I will ask you a similar question and I will say, here's a good learning exercise for y'all. What would be a better way to ask a similar question to match 2 separate things here that you're being asked to do? Maybe, here, I'll get you started. About that. So if you had to label, if I gave you a list, like a list of say 8 different types of practice or fields of practice, right? And I said, okay, label these as direct or indirect. That's what you're being asked to know here in a very poorly constructed item. You know, your instructors are not perfect, especially when they're writing test questions. It happens. But to clarify and make sure you understand this better, that's what we need to know, okay? And then what would be another example of how to ask what we're studying here for this item?
Multiple choice.
Multiple choice, but what's the content that we're studying that this is all about?
Oh, I'm sorry, methods.
It's about methods. So we could say, that would be pretty clear, wouldn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And since we have this one thing that sticks out right here, ethics, that didn't go with these, how could we ask a question that's clear cut about that without being confusing? We're going to do it as a match question. Help me figure out how to do that. Help me write a non-confusing match question that has to do with ethics. We've done direct and indirect practice. We've done methods. Now we're going to do something on ethics. How can I write that match? What you're supposed to do, the instructions for doing the match related to ethics. Just take a stab at it.
With the ethics, would you do a matching like with matching with the 6 categories of the ethical responsibilities? With that?
Okay,
Like
you're exactly on the right track, Maya. Good. Okay, so help me phrase that in a way that would be not confusing.
One of them would be commitment to clients. So I guess we would have to come up with an example that would match with that, because basically with social workers, you do have a commitment to your clients. So it'll probably be good if you kept their information to yourself, or you don't let it leak out, or just don't tell other people. Show your clients that you can be trusted, and that you understand their personal business, and to keep it to yourself. Would that be an example? I'm just jumping the gun here.
Okay, how about this? Match the bad practice, because I think that's where I was going with this and then got distracted or just in a hurry, like I said, but this
Okay.
is clarifying this a little bit. But what I'm wanting y'all to do is separate out these methods of practice and their characteristic as either direct, face-to-face, or indirect, not face-to-face with the clients that are the object of why our agencies exist, why our interests exist, right? Why our field exists. Got it? So if I wanted to test you on the ethics, the NASW Code of Ethics, this might have been a better way to ask that question. You are on the right track. Match the bad practice examples with the ethical responsibility violated.
Oh, yeah.
See, now do you get why that was such a weird item, the matching there? It was important.
I'm sorry, but don't we already have a section on that on the quiz?
We did. This is it. This is what you had. You had a matching.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That you had to do. But it was all kind of foobarred. It was all kind of messed up, So and don't quote me on that. I don't want to get in trouble. Anyway, so yeah. Well, I'm spending a lot of time to make sure that this is clear for y'all when you're studying from this.
Okay.
You got it? Everybody?
And will you post this on Moodle?
Yes, I'm gonna post it just like this.
Okay.
All right. And these were the things that you were supposed to choose from that we just went through. All right, so now let's go down here. I don't know why this highlighted blue all of a sudden. It wasn't doing that when I put it up there. Okay, social welfare institution only exists on the state level. I'm going to leave it blank. False because Obviously, we know that that's not true. It exists on the federal level too, as well as on the local level. And that's because social welfare institution is not just government agencies. It includes government agencies, but it's not just government agencies. Most programs in the US are tax funded and based on a person's work history. That's true, social welfare programs, but social service programs are not those that provide some sort of subsistence or assistance with housing or utilities or whatever. It's not a cash or in kind. Those are terms that we talk about in policy, where cash is cash. You pay for something, you get cash, right? Or like Social Security checks, you get that. Or if you get unemployment, you get that. Or if you get TANF because you're poor raising kids, you're going to get that, pitiful as it is. But if you, that's cash is cash. But then if you get in kind, that means you don't get the cash. You don't get the cash for your medical treatment when you go to a public hospital or a public clinic. You get the in kind, you get the service without having to pay cash sometimes, or you have your insurance covered, whatever. Or if you go to a food bank, you don't get the money to buy the food. That's a government program called SNAP, Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program. What you get is the actual food, right? So it's in kind, cash versus in kind. So social welfare programs are those things that provide some sort of subsistence, whether it's in kind or cash. But you just need to know that most of them are tax funded based on a person's work history. In Louisiana, social workers hold a master's in social work degree can automatically be licensed as a certified social worker. Oh boy. No, you still have to take a test. Yeah, that's false. You have to take a test with a master's in social work, whether you're a certified social worker or a licensed clinical social worker. Social welfare and social work mean the same thing. Why is that false? We're almost done. Oh, no, we're not. All right, and we got a few minutes left. I'm going to let you read through these and study these so that you understand what they are asking you, because these will show up again in similar form, but they will not be exactly the same. So you don't want to just see it and say, oh, that sounds like that was false, and not understand what you're being asked. You get it?
Mhm.
All right, but down here, let's go ahead and do these real quick. Which of the following are the best reasons why the 35 Social Security Act was and remains important to the social welfare institution? It created a public child welfare services.
Yes. Or no. Oh,
I said no.
Yes or no? No, it did not. Public child
no.
welfare
That's-
services started in 1915 with Children's Bureau. It provides health care and disability benefits.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly right. And then what about it helped prevent anarchy? I think I had a discussion about this.
I said no.
I would think yes.
And why would you say yes? Who said that?
Because that would cause like a lot of social discord with people hungry and unemployed. They're going to resort to like violence and
Exactly.
upheaval.
Exactly right.
Oh,
That's right. That's exactly right. Okay, how about first time all states were federally required to establish and maintain public welfare offices?
I said yes.
That's
Yes.
exactly
Yeah.
yeah, I've emphasized that. So we didn't have welfare offices in every state. Almost everyone did by the time of the 31st Social Security Act, but it certainly said, okay, all states must have them. Distinguishing characteristic of the social work profession, which would be micro. Finding a foster home placement. You're working with a kid.
I think that would
No.
be micro.
Yes. Mhm.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
sorry.
micro,
Face to face, that's micro. level.
direct.
Helping a community organization find funds to provide services.
I would say no.
Macro.
That's
No.
like a lot of people.
That's right. That's right. That's going to be meso.
Would that be macro? Oh, meso. Never
It would
mind.
be meso because you're dealing with, yeah, If you were dealing with the state to try to, you know, create a new service, that would be macro. But you're dealing with a community organization, which usually means something local to provide services. So you're looking for funds. So no, that would be meso, and it would be indirect. Teaching in a CSW accredited social work program.
False.
Maybe.
That's right. It wouldn't be that one. And teaching a small church.
Oh, no.
That's right. Because even though I'm talking to y'all one-on-one and have you in a class, I'm informing you about social work, those of you who are taking it as elective. And yet, but for those who are social work majors, I am beginning the socialization process for you with the basic beginning knowledge of the profession that you're going to use and go out and do face-to-face with. That's where we all start. Okay, so I am indirect. I'm not affecting clients directly, social work clients. I'm affecting you to work with those clients. You see, teaching in a small group, church youth group, how to prevent, respond to bullying.
Yes.
That's right, because you're working with those kids, a small group, which are examples of macro practice: organizing for a homeless shelter, presenting evidence to a community problem in a city council, serving as assistant to the United States Secretary of State, or investigating a report of child maltreatment.
I said B for this one. Well, on your version, presenting evidence of a community problem at the city council meeting.
All of those, you see that? Organizing a fundraiser, that's indirect, that's macro. Presenting evidence of a community, and could be meso too, but organizing a fundraising for a homeless shelter is pretty macro. Presenting evidence of a community problem in a city council meeting, that would be macro. And serving as assistant to United States Secretary of State would be macro. This would be micro. Not these would be more macro. Okay, which are abbreviations for the organization that provides assurance that the university social work program is nationally accredited. Council of Social Work Education. I'm running out of time. That's when we'll fill these in. Don't get tricked. This doesn't mean this is the credential for Minnesota's social work board. This is our ethics, and this is our test writing organization. This is the Council of Social Work Education. 4 practice methods. Oh, yay, we made it. Of social work practice, which is an example of indirect practice. Locating resources for a homeless client, conducting psychosocial group with detained juvenile boys, providing private counseling to individuals, families, and groups, or testifying on
Is it
immigration.
B?
B.
Indirect practice.
C?
Yes. Why'd you say C finally?
Because I would think that if it were at a macro or like, you know, like at a federal level, I don't know. I guess that's why I picked it.
Okay. That's exactly right. So if that's that one that you picked about the juveniles, that is direct practice, and you're doing face-to-face with small group, right? Hold on. So conducting a psychoeducational group. This is just a different type of group. We're going to talk about that with fields of practice with detained juvenile boys. You're in a group and you're doing direct work with those kids in that group.
Oh.
Small group. Okay. There are different types of groups that we do. Psychoeducational means that you're going to, this might, for example, be a group of kids that are in a detention facility, girls or boys, and they would, maybe they had acting out behavior, or maybe they were hyperactive, or maybe they, you know, had something that that contributed to some of their behavior. Okay. Resources for a homeless client, that's direct, and this is direct, and this is direct, because you're also working with individuals, families, and groups with private counseling. Okay. And then you can counsel community, sure, but you do it in a different way than counseling on an interpersonal level.
I guess the trick here is that we just have to make sure the difference between direct and indirect, and then when we do, we got to figure out on what level, because when I saw the testifying, well, then I came up with the image of like testifying in court. You're talking directly about a problem, but I guess with this one, it's on a different level. I mean, you're talking about it, but not to your client. Like you're kind of like talking about it, but not directly to your client. So I guess that's the tricky part about these two types of practices.
That's right. Yeah. And anytime you start categorizing anything in any discipline, it can get real confusing. You have to kind of keep the different categories of how you're understanding a discipline straight, right? So, and that's what's going on here. That's what this is about, is understanding the different components of the profession and the way that we understand the different components as working with clients and working in ways that impact those who work directly with clients. That's right. Well, we're totally out of time right now, so I'm gonna have to end this and make sure you sign out. And I've just saved this and we'll add it before I go to my next class for you to see, okay?
Will we finish up the rest of this on Thursday?
Finish up what now?
Will we complete all of this on Thursday, since we didn't go over all of it, or should we just do that on our own time?
Well, we went over all of it except for just the rest of the true false.
Okay.
True false have the answers there for you. What I encourage you to do, Maya, is to just read the item and figure out, okay, why is it true or false? And
Okay.
if you those that we did not go over for sake of time, because I wanted to have y'all answer, I actually meant to leave these blank so y'all would answer them. Maybe succeed in that with the true false, with the matching. But anyway, so yeah, just make sure you find the answer for that in your material, and the notes and the things that you have to read that's on the board, and you'll do fine.
Okay.
Okay. All right then.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you.
You're welcome. See you Thursday.